October 1988. The Plaza Hotel, New York City. Workers in coveralls move like ghosts through the oak room, prying century-old brass fixtures from mahogany walls that have remained unchanged since 1907. 8 decades of elegance, ritual, and memory vanish in a single afternoon. The reason? A new owner wants everything modernized, streamlined, and monetized. The plaza isn't being renovated, it's being gutted. Cash, ego, and ambition have taken precedence over tradition. Nearly $500 million were borrowed to acquire this landmark, and now its soul is being auctioned piece by piece. 2 women didn't die here, yet something did. The culture, the character, the irreplaceable spirit that transformed the hotel from a building into an institution. To understand the plaza's downfall, we must journey back to the dream of one man, the vision to construct a hotel unlike anything the world had ever seen. Nestled at the corner of Fifth Avenue and Central Park South, the plaza rises 18 stories of French Renaissance limestone, staring down the most valuable real estate in America. For over a century, this address has meant wealth, glamour, and status, the unmistakable announcement that you have arrived. Cross the revolving doors, and ordinary life dissolves. The marble floors echo with footsteps of the powerful, the famous, the ambitious. Crystal chandeliers cast flattering light on everyone from the weary traveler to the political elite. The plaza isn't just a hotel, it's a stage, a character. It is performed in more films than most actors. Alfred Hitchcock captured its elegance in North by Northwest. The Great Gatsby, both versions, relied on the plaza to embody American luxury. Home Alone 2 turned its lobby into a playground. Crocodile Dundee wandered its halls, bemused by American opulence. Every romantic comedy set in New York eventually finds its way here. The numbers are staggering. Construction completed on October 1, 1907, costing $12.5 million, roughly $400 million today. The building had 800 guest rooms across 19 floors, including 500 private bathrooms at a time when most hotels offered shared facilities. Telephones connected every room. Pneumatic tubes delivered messages at impossible speeds, and the craftsmanship was breathtaking. The lobby alone demanded enough marble to cover a city block, and 1,650 crystal chandeliers shimmered throughout the building. The palm quartz stained glass ceiling elevated afternoon tea into a near-religious experience. The oak room's panels came from vanished forests. Every detail whispered permanence. This building was built to outlast generations. Yet the statistics only tell part of the story. The plaza was more than marble and crystal. It was where American wealth performed for itself and the world. The guest registers read like a history of the 20th century. Mark Twain held court here in the early years, dispensing wit to anyone who approached. F. Scott Fitzgerald, banned for swimming drunk in the Pulitzer Fountain, immortalized the hotel in his fiction as a symbol of glamour and doom. The Beatles occupied a full floor in February 1964. Fans swarmed for days, police struggled to maintain order, and journalists filled the suites where royalty once stayed. Frank Lloyd Wright lived at the plaza while designing the Guggenheim, complaining endlessly about room rates, yet refusing to leave. Truman Capote hosted his legendary black and white ball in the Grand Ballroom in 1966, assembling a guest list from Sinatra to the Kansas couple who inspired In Cold Blood. Every president since Theodore Roosevelt has walked these halls. Foreign dignitaries treated the plaza as a required stop in New York. Secret negotiations, treaty discussions, and diplomatic receptions shaped history behind these doors. Decisions made here affected millions who would never set foot inside. The hotel also housed permanent residents, a distinction that elevated it above ordinary hospitality. Wealthy widows preferred hotel service to managing apartments. Retired industrialists occupied suites indefinitely. Eccentric heirs chose the plaza over family mansions, trusting staff to handle every inconvenience. Some families inherited suites across generations. Children grew up wandering hallways designed for visiting dignitaries. They learned to walk in a world where every breakfast, every interaction, every fixture signaled refinement and status. These residents weren't guests, they were neighbors, part of the plaza's living history. Yet by 1988, the building's legacy faced annihilation. The brass, the wood, the art, and the rituals that had defined the plaza for decades were disappearing under jackhammers and crowbars. Money dictated design. Trend replaced tradition. The heart of the plaza, the essence that made it more than limestone and glass, was being auctioned to the highest bidder. This story is not merely about a building. It's about the collision of ambition, wealth, and cultural memory. The plaza, once a temple of American luxury, now became a battlefield of greed. To walk through its halls today is to witness echoes of elegance, moments of cinematic history, and whispers of the personalities who made it legendary. But it is also a cautionary tale, a reminder that even the grandest institutions are vulnerable when the soul is undervalued, when legacy yields to profit, and when history is traded for novelty. They recognized each other's voices in the elevators. They knew the doormen by name. The doormen knew their children and eventually their grandchildren. In a city defined by transience, the plaza created something rare: continuity, loyalty, a sense of home. Here, the hotel functioned less as a business and more as a village within a building. Residents watched out for one another. Staff became an extended family. The longest-serving employees had seen generations grow up in these halls, witnessing the arc of lives unfold against a backdrop of marble and crystal. Kay Thompson understood this world when she created Eloise. The mischievous girl who roamed the plaza's corridors captured the truth. The hotel contained a secret realm, a private community hidden beneath public grandeur. Eloise's antics mirrored those of children who had really sprinted down these halls for decades, who had demanded room service just as the book described. The story resonated because it reflected the lived experience of permanent residents. To live at the plaza was to belong to something far larger than a luxury address. For most of its history, ownership changed rarely. The original developers held it for decades. When a transfer occurred, buyers understood they were purchasing an institution, not just a building or a brand. They inherited a responsibility to maintain traditions, preserve staff culture, and honor the intangible essence of a home that mattered deeply to residents. That changed in 1943 when Conrad Hilton acquired the hotel. Hilton approached the plaza as a problem in business optimization: increase efficiency, cut costs, streamline operations. The human dimension, the personality of the hotel, began to recede. Later, Westin Hotels assumed ownership, and with every corporate transition, subtle erosions took place. Cost reductions masqueraded as modernization. Staff cuts were justified by new systems. Small compromises seemed logical in isolation, but collectively they drained life from the building. Permanent residents noticed first. Familiar faces disappeared without explanation. Long-standing staff were replaced by people who didn't know their names, preferences, or routines. The hotel felt less like a home and more like a business that happened to contain apartments. Complaints were muted. Some accepted change as inevitable. A few began quietly to seek alternatives, but leaving meant abandoning decades of accumulated life, rituals, and memories. By the 1980s, the plaza had evolved into the ultimate trophy property, the most famous hotel in America, open to the highest bidder. Developers saw its potential as a real estate windfall more than as a living institution. The 800 rooms could be converted into luxury condominiums worth tens of millions of dollars. The permanent apartments could be sold at enormous profit. The math was irresistible. Gut the operations, keep the facade, extract maximum value. In 1986, however, preservationists achieved a crucial victory. The New York City Landmarks Preservation Commission designated the Palm Court, the Oak Room, the Oak Bar, and the Grand Ballroom as protected interiors. These spaces, with their stained glass ceilings, irreplaceable woodwork, and historical gravitas, could not be altered without approval. Landmark status acknowledged the plaza's cultural importance beyond its limestone exterior. The building was officially recognized as a monument of craftsmanship that could never be replicated. But there were limits. Landmarks preserved bricks and mortar. They could not protect culture, community, or tradition. They could not prevent staff layoffs or the removal of services that made permanent residents feel at home. Intangible values, the very essence of the plaza as a living institution, remained vulnerable. A developer could hollow out everything that made the hotel unique and still comply with regulations. The hotel went on the market in 1988. The asking price exceeded $400 million, a sum that represented more than just real estate. It was a piece of American mythology. The question loomed, would any buyer truly understand what they were purchasing? Would they recognize that the plaza's value lay not in its rooms or fixtures, but in the life contained within its walls? Could anyone preserve what no balance sheet could capture? The battles over ownership would attract some of the most notorious figures in American finance and real estate: billionaires and international investors, developers with cowering ambition and equally massive debts, sovereign wealth funds. Each approached the plaza with promises of restoration. Few, if any, would honor the intangible spirit of the hotel. The institution that seemed eternal was about to discover how quickly even legend could be undermined by those who saw only dollar signs. Yet before celebrities, scandals, bankruptcies, and lawsuits, there was a man with a vision: Harry S. Black. In 1905, he decided to tear down the old plaza and build something the world had never seen. Black was not a hotelier, he was a deal-maker. Born in Ontario, Canada in 1863, he came to America as a young man in pursuit of opportunity. He found it not in laying bricks, but in financing them. By the 1890s, Black had risen to lead the George A. Fuller Company, one of America's largest construction firms. Fuller built skyscrapers and pioneered techniques that made tall buildings possible. Black understood a simple truth: real money lay not in construction, but in controlling the land beneath it. In 1901, he orchestrated a merger, creating the U.S. Realty and Construction Company, which combined Fuller Construction with vast Manhattan real estate holdings. At 38, Black was president of a company that controlled some of New York's most valuable land. His ambition was boundless. He wanted monuments, buildings that would outlast him, outshine competitors, and define modern American luxury. The original Plaza Hotel, built in 1890, was unremarkable: 8 stories of brick that looked dated almost immediately. By 1905, Fifth Avenue had become Manhattan's most prestigious address. Central Park had matured into the city's green heart. The old plaza no longer matched its surroundings. Black saw opportunity. Others saw adequacy. He saw vision. He persuaded investors to demolish the existing hotel and build something unprecedented: the largest, most luxurious hotel in America. He envisioned a building that redefined hospitality. Financing was assembled: $12.5 million, equivalent to roughly $400 million today. Every detail would be extraordinary: the finest materials, the latest technology, and craftsmanship designed to endure generations. The plaza would not simply serve guests, it would stage a new American ideal of wealth, glamour, and permanence.
And so, from the ambition of Harry Black to the community of residents, the drama of ownership, and the slow erosion of character under corporate hands, the Plaza's story is a tapestry woven from vision, artistry, culture, and commerce. It is a story of human continuity interrupted by ambition, of tradition threatened by profit, and of a building whose true value cannot be counted, but can only be felt by those who lived within its walls. In 1905, $12.5 million was more than a construction budget. It was a declaration. The new plaza would spare no expense. Harry Black chose Henry Janeway Hardenberg as architect, a deliberate and strategic decision. Hardenberg had already left his mark on Manhattan. The Dakota Apartments on Central Park West, completed in 1884, and the original Waldorf Astoria, completed in stages between 1893 and 1897. He understood how buildings could announce importance from blocks away, how spaces could elevate the wealthy and make them feel celebrated.
Hardenberg proposed a French Renaissance chateau, 19 stories of limestone and brick rising proudly at the corner of Fifth Avenue and Central Park South. The design referenced European aristocracy without copying it, a distinctly American statement, wealth forging its own traditions. Twin towers flanked the facade. A green copper roof would catch the sunlight across Midtown and the southern end of Central Park. The grand entrance would open onto a lobby designed to humble visitors with scale alone, letting them feel both awe and aspiration before speaking to anyone. Construction began immediately. The corner lot posed logistical challenges, coordinating two street frontages, driving foundation pilings deep into Manhattan bedrock, and erecting a steel skeleton floor by floor through 1906. By early 1907, the exterior was largely complete. The remaining months were devoted to interior finishing, where the ambition of the plaza truly took shape. Hardenberg's vision reached across the globe. Italian marble covered floors and columns, crystal chandeliers sparkled from Europe, rare woods paneled the public rooms. The Palm Court received special attention. Beneath a vaulted stained glass ceiling, afternoon tea would become ritual. Light filtered through colored glass, casting a glow photographers would chase for decades. The Oak Room and Oak Bar were masculine retreats, dark and commanding. Heavy furniture, rich woodwork, and murals depicting outdoor scenes created a world designed for serious business, where women were initially excluded, a reflection of contemporary norms that would eventually embarrass the hotel, but seemed refined in 1907. Guest rooms were technological marvels. Each featured its own bathroom with hot and cold running water, a telephone linked to a central switchboard, and central heating that maintained comfort year-round. A pneumatic tube system whisked messages between floors almost instantly. In 1907, these conveniences were revolutionary. Today, they feel ordinary, yet they were the cutting edge of hospitality. On October 1st, 1907, the plaza opened. New York society treated the event as a major occasion. The New York Times devoted pages to its launch. Every suite was booked, waiting lists formed immediately, and rooms expected to rent by the week were snapped up by those wishing to live by the year. Black had succeeded beyond expectation. He had built more than a hotel. He had built a destination, a symbol, a stage on which wealth and ambition could perform. The plaza instantly became the address for dignitaries and American aristocrats alike. Its green copper roof dominated Midtown. Its limestone facade broadcast permanence and grandeur. Financial returns followed architectural triumph. Room rates exceeded competitors, and permanent residences generated stable income year-round. Black's vision was paying off, but his personal story would take darker turns. Harry Black continued expanding U.S. realty through the 1910s and 1920s. He leveraged the plaza as both jewel and advertisement for a growing empire. But the stock market crash of 1929 reduced fortunes to dust. Properties once thought priceless became liabilities. Manageable debts turned crushing. On July 19, 1930, Black died by suicide at his Long Island home. He was 67. The man who had built a monument to ambition never lived to see it fully endure. The pattern would repeat. Builders of grand institutions rarely outlast the monuments they create. The plaza, however, would endure, outliving every owner, every market collapse. Its chandeliers would keep burning while empires rose and fell. Hardenberg fared slightly better, though his reputation faded with changing tastes. After World War I, modernism demanded simplicity. Ornate facades seemed passé. He died in 1918, just 11 years after the plaza opened, but obituaries hailed the hotel as his masterpiece, a judgment that has held for over a century. The plaza was designed to impress, and it did. Yet a hotel is not a house. It cannot belong to one family across generations. It belongs to everyone who passes through its doors, the guests who sleep in its beds, the staff who polish the floors and change the sheets, and ultimately the owner who holds the deed. Ownership leaves marks. Some proprietors preserve, others extract. The building absorbs change and endures. Its resilience would be tested repeatedly in the century to come. Walking into the plaza in 1920 felt like entering a small European kingdom transplanted to Manhattan. Marble columns soared toward distant ceilings. Crystal chandeliers scattered light across floors, polished to mirror shine. Bellhops moved with military precision. The message was clear: you had arrived somewhere that mattered. Staff operated according to invisible hierarchies. The concierge knew everything about everyone: preferences, quirks, even secrets. Head waiters commanded dining rooms like generals, memorizing who preferred which table, who tipped generously, who didn't. Doormen stood vigil outside through snow, rain, and summer heat, recognizing residents by their footsteps long before faces appeared. They hailed cabs with effortless gestures honed over years. A skilled doorman made arrival ceremonial. A missing doorman was noticed immediately. Consistency mattered. It created a living rhythm that residents came to rely on. The permanent residents themselves formed a small society within the hotel. Wealthy widows dominated this population, women whose husbands had died, leaving fortunes too large to manage alone. They lived in the plaza not out of necessity, but by choice, drawn to comfort, service, and community. Over time, they became visible threads in a larger tapestry, linking the hotel's past to its present. Generations of staff and residents created a continuity that no ledger could capture, a sense of home within a structure built to impress the world. The plaza was more than bricks and marble, more than technology and decoration. It was ritual, performance, and private society in one. Every chandelier reflected light, history, and human ambition. Every column anchored generations of lives in a building designed to endure. And through it all, the hotel stood, a testament to vision, craftsmanship, and the intricate balance between luxury and humanity. Hotel living solved problems that private homes created. No need for servants, no worry about repairs, no loneliness in vast, empty rooms. At the plaza, staff handled everything while providing constant human presence. Residents occupied suites on upper floors, some filling rooms with heirloom furniture shipped from distant estates, others accepting the hotel's elegant furnishings, adding only books, photographs, and personal touches. Either way, they made these rooms home. Children were born here. The elderly passed away in the same walls. Decades were lived within the hotel's embrace. The Palm Court served as the social heart of this hidden society.
Afternoon tea arrived precisely at 4 o'clock, silver pots gleaming atop pristine white tablecloths beneath the famous vaulted stained glass ceiling. Light filtered through the colored panes, shifting with weather and season. Soft greens and ambers on cloudy days, brilliant yellows and ruby reds on sunny afternoons. Regulars noticed these subtleties, remarking on them with quiet delight. The Palm Court created its own rhythm, a private calendar marking celebrations, gossip, and social maneuvering. Women convened there to exchange information that could not be shared elsewhere. Engagements were announced over tea before appearing in newspapers. Divorces were whispered amid delicate spoons stirring marmalade. Business deals were brokered in coded language designed to exclude prying eyes. In the Palm Court, reputation was currency, and the social economy of Manhattan flowed as predictably as the afternoon light.
The Oak Room functioned by entirely different rules. Here, masculine authority reigned. Dark wood paneling absorbed sound and light alike. Heavy furniture accommodated serious discussions over substantial meals and stronger drinks. Women were forbidden until 1969. For 6 decades, the Oak Room remained a sanctuary where men conducted business, negotiated contracts, and wielded influence without feminine interference. The Oak Bar next door mirrored these policies. Lawyers, bankers, and brokers gathered after market close, sinking into leather chairs to dissect the day's events, while murals of pastoral landscapes softened the intensity of their conversations. Men who spent hours amid glass and steel office towers found comfort in these painted forests and fields. The Persian Room provided a different stage entirely, a glittering nightclub within the hotel where society danced and was seen. Artists like Eartha Kitt performed, while Hildegard drew fashionable crowds. Champagne flowed across tables, guests observing one another with practiced discretion. The point was simple: to see and be seen, to participate in a theater of social affirmation. The Grand Ballroom hosted events that captured national attention. Debutante balls introduced young women to society. Charity galas raised millions for sanctioned causes. Corporate celebrations rewarded executives with evenings of orchestrated elegance. Capable of accommodating over 1,000 guests, the room required full-time maintenance just for its chandeliers. Truman Capote understood the plaza's social power when he selected the Grand Ballroom for his black and white ball in November 1966. 500 invitations were issued to an eclectic mix of celebrities, socialites, and unexpected guests. Frank Sinatra beside Kansas farmers, Hollywood stars next to aristocrats. Newspapers called it the party of the century, but within the ballroom, Capote demonstrated a simple truth: whoever controlled the plaza's events controlled New York society itself.
The hotel attracted guests who defined eras. F. Scott Fitzgerald frequented the plaza during the 1920s, treating it as his personal stage. One night, intoxicated and exuberant, he stripped down and dove into the Pulitzer fountain outside. Management banned him. Fitzgerald seemed delighted by the scandal. The story became part of his legend, entwining the plaza with the mythos of the American dream. In February 1964, the Beatles arrived. The hotel transformed into a media circus. Fans surrounded the building for days. Police struggled to maintain order. The band held press conferences in suites normally reserved for dignified business travelers. Teenage screams echoed through halls designed for whispers and discretion. Yet the staff adapted, meeting chaos with professionalism and calm. Frank Lloyd Wright lived at the plaza while designing the Guggenheim Museum, bringing eccentricity and prestige simultaneously. He complained endlessly about noise, service, and room rates. He threatened to leave repeatedly, yet he never did. The hotel tolerated his quirks because presence conveyed importance. Architects and visionaries staying at the plaza announced that the hotel mattered to those who valued beauty.
Guests came from every corner of power. Foreign heads of state treated the plaza as the only acceptable New York address. Presidents from both parties attended events in the ballroom. Corporate titans negotiated mergers over dinner. The hotel functioned as neutral territory where rivals could meet without surrendering advantage. Its reputation guaranteed discretion, and the staff ensured it. Yet these unseen facilitators of luxury rarely received recognition. Housekeepers meticulously changed sheets for decades. Elevator operators learned the floors of permanent residents without being told. Kitchen staff prepared thousands of meals to exacting standards. These employees passed knowledge to younger colleagues in informal apprenticeships.
Skills accumulated across generations, creating continuity in service, decorum, and ritual. Some families served the plaza for multiple generations, sons following fathers into service, daughters joining mothers in housekeeping. The building became a family business without any employee owning a stake, yet pride and loyalty ran as deep as in any estate. K. Thompson captured this essence in Eloise, published in 1955. The mischievous girl lived at the plaza, navigating hidden corridors, forming relationships with indulgent staff, and treating the hotel as her private playground. Eloise sold millions of copies, introducing children worldwide to the magic of a real hotel, alive with secret worlds. Her story resonated because it described reality. The plaza contained layers of life hidden beneath public grandeur. Permanent residents knew corridors tourists never saw. Staff moved through service passageways invisible to the untrained eye. Multiple realities coexisted in the same building, harmonized by impeccable management and inherited tradition. For half a century, the plaza seemed eternal. Routines appeared immutable, standards unwavering. Guests returned year after year to familiar faces, the same doormen greeting them, the same waiters remembering their preferences, the same light filtering through the palm court ceiling. Consistency created rarity, a place where time moved differently, where the chaos of the outside world could not intrude. Within its walls, life unfolded on its own rhythm, a private universe anchored by human connection, ceremonial precision, and enduring elegance. The plaza was more than a hotel. It was a living ecosystem, a theater, a society, and a home. Its walls contained decades of births, deaths, romances, and business deals. Its rooms bore witness to triumphs and scandals alike. Its staff held knowledge and loyalty spanning generations. And through it all, the building endured, immutable yet adaptable, a monument to the imagination, ambition, and ritual of Manhattan.
Hotels are businesses. No matter how grand or storied, they have balance sheets, shareholders, and quarterly reports. They demand constant investment just to maintain existing standards, a truth that would soon clash with the plaza's cultivated elegance. By the 1970s, the numbers began telling a different story, and the hotel's aura of permanence would meet the harsh arithmetic of profit. The plaza changed hands for the first time in 1943. Conrad Hilton purchased it as part of a nationwide expansion, having made his fortune buying distressed properties during the Depression. But the plaza was far from distressed. It was prestigious. Hilton coveted the name more than the building itself. To him, the hotel was a system to be optimized. His chain operated on standardized methods, accounting procedures, training programs, performance metrics. These practices worked beautifully for roadside motels and chain hotels, but fit uneasily within a landmark that had developed its own culture over 4 decades. The changes under Hilton were subtle but cumulative. Staff positions were consolidated. Departments that once operated independently now answered to corporate hierarchies. Long-serving employees who remembered the plaza's origins found their expertise undervalued. Corporate consistency became the priority. The hotel's unique identity became an obstacle to efficiency. Some traditions survived. The Palm Court continued its afternoon teas, the Oak Room remained a male sanctuary, and permanent residents retained their suites. But the texture of daily life shifted imperceptibly. Supplies were slightly cheaper, service slightly less elaborate, a few fewer staff members covered more responsibilities. Each compromise seemed minor. Taken together, they altered the essence of the institution. In 1953, Hilton sold the plaza to real estate investor A.M. Sonnabend for $15 million. Sonnabend understood hotels, but saw them as properties rather than living institutions. His management was competent but uninspired. The building functioned, the standards were maintained, yet devotion, human continuity was absent. By the 1970s, New York City faced crises that would strain even the most resilient institutions. Municipal bankruptcy loomed, crime surged, wealthy families fled to suburbs, corporations moved offices to other states. The city that had once pulsed at the center of the world suddenly seemed dangerous and unpredictable. Tourism declined. Business travelers sought safer destinations. The plaza felt the pressure acutely. Occupancy rates fell. Permanent residents aged without replacement. Suites that had once housed multiple generations began to empty as elderly occupants died. Meanwhile, the plaza's operating costs refused to fall. Pipes corroded. Electrical systems required constant updating. The limestone facade weathered, demanding repair. Chandeliers, priceless and intricate, required meticulous care. Maintaining an 80-year-old icon cost far more than running a modern building. Every year brought new unavoidable expenses, and each new corporate owner faced the same dilemma: balance preservation against profitability. Westin Hotels acquired the plaza in 1975, bringing the familiar language of corporate efficiency. Brand consistency, standard procedures, and operational metrics dominated management decisions. The plaza's unique character became both an asset, marketed as a symbol of New York's sophistication, and a complication, a logistical headache for those seeking predictable returns. Permanent residents observed these transitions with unease. New owners imposed rules and restrictions that eroded habits established over decades. Staff no longer knew the histories of the families who had lived in the building for generations. Long-standing managers regarded residents as obstacles to operational efficiency rather than participants in a living community.
Some residents held legal protections. Rent stabilization laws applied to certain long-term tenants, limiting rent increases and preventing easy displacement. To corporate owners, these protections were inconvenient, yet they would shape conflicts over profit for decades. Even social customs began to change. In 1969, after pressure from the National Organization for Women and a formal lawsuit, the Oak Room, exclusive male territory for 6 decades, finally admitted women. Protests, complaints, and public scrutiny forced the hotel to reconsider a tradition that had seemed eternal. Some male patrons grumbled, most adapted quickly. The episode revealed a critical truth. Customs that felt permanent were, in fact, choices. When societal pressure mounted, even deeply entrenched rituals could be reconsidered. Landmark protections offered another layer of security, but with limits. In 1969, the New York City Landmarks Preservation Commission designated the plaza's exterior as a landmark. The limestone facade, distinctive windows, and architectural details were protected from alteration. In 1986, the Commission extended protection to interior spaces. The Palm Court, Oak Room, Grand Ballroom, and Terrace Room received landmark status. Stained glass ceilings, oak paneling, and decorative plasterwork were preserved by law. Landmark designation gave preservationists legal standing to challenge proposed changes, requiring expert review before execution. It created a formal acknowledgement. The plaza belonged, in some sense, to the public, regardless of who held the deed. The building's significance extended beyond its commercial function, affirming its role as a cultural artifact. But the law had limits. Landmark protections could prevent dramatic destruction, but they could not mandate maintenance or investment. They could not ensure that owners preserved the spirit, culture, or community of the hotel. A proprietor intent on extracting maximum value while minimizing expenditure could let even protected spaces deteriorate slowly. The chandeliers could dim, the oak panels could age, and the palm court could lose its luster, all while technically complying with regulations. Preservation offered defense against overt demolition, but it offered little protection against incremental decay.
By the mid-1970s, the plaza faced a paradox. It was simultaneously a public treasure and a private business, a symbol of elegance and a ledger entry. Its survival required more than law. It demanded owners with vision, commitment, and respect for its history. The tension between tradition and commerce was permanent, a defining characteristic of the hotel. Every owner, every manager, every corporate policy would leave marks, some invisible, some enduring. The plaza had survived decades of social change, financial crises, and evolving cultural norms. Yet the coming decades would test the building in new ways: high-stakes real estate speculation, global investment, and profit motives threatening the very soul of the institution. The plaza's beauty, history, and social significance were protected only in part. Its future would depend on the choices of those who held the keys and controlled the checkbook. Laws could protect stone and wood, ceilings and facades. They could safeguard marble columns and stained glass, oak paneling and plasterwork. But laws could not protect what truly made the plaza special, the intangible essence that gave the hotel life, the staff knowledge accumulated across decades, the culture that defined service, the quiet community among permanent residents, the attention to detail that separated the plaza from competitors. None of this could be codified. A future owner could strip the soul of the building while technically complying with landmark regulations. By the mid-1980s, the plaza had become a trophy property. Its fame outstripped its financial performance. New luxury hotels offered modern amenities that the aging plaza could not match without extensive renovation. Business travelers increasingly prioritized convenience over prestige. Permanent residents provided steady revenue, but it wasn't enough to sustain the full operation. Savvy real estate investors recognized an opportunity. The plaza occupied one of Manhattan's most valuable corners. The land itself was worth vast sums. Guest rooms could become condominiums. Public spaces could be converted to retail. The hotel could be restructured to maximize revenue regardless of its storied history.
In 1988, the plaza went on the market. Multiple parties expressed interest. The asking price exceeded $400 million. Any buyer would acquire not just real estate, but American mythology. Landmarked spaces that couldn't be altered, permanent residence with legal protections, and a building that demanded continuous, expensive maintenance. The plaza required an owner who understood that it was more than a ledger entry, someone willing to invest, to respect constraints, to preserve what made it matter. Instead, the plaza got Donald Trump. Trump purchased the hotel in March 1988 for $47.5 million, then the highest price ever paid for a single hotel property. At a press conference, he promised a full restoration, declaring that the plaza would once again be the greatest hotel in the world. The language was bold, cinematic, aspirational. The reality would prove far more complicated. The first warning signs appeared in the financing. Trump borrowed almost the entire purchase price, relying heavily on junk bonds with interest rates exceeding 14%. To break even, the hotel would need massive, immediate increases in revenue. Analysts warned the math might be impossible. Trump waved away their concerns with characteristic confidence. He placed his wife, Ivana, at the helm as hotel president. Her official salary was $1 per year, supplemented by an unlimited wardrobe. Publicly, the move looked perfect. Ivana had managed other Trump properties, and her name added glamour. Behind the scenes, the longtime Plaza staff watched with apprehension, knowing that new leadership often brought turbulence. Changes came within weeks. Trump demanded cost reductions. Staffing levels which had once supported meticulous service were slashed. Departments were consolidated. Employees with decades of institutional knowledge received termination notices. When they walked out, they took the hotel's memory with them. Service suffered. Amenities disappeared or diminished. The attention to detail that had defined the Plaza became harder to maintain under leaner staffing. First-time guests saw luxury. Regulars saw decline.
Trump announced plans to convert upper-floor guest rooms into private condominiums. Each unit would sell for millions, generating enormous one-time revenue while permanently shrinking the hotel's inventory. Permanent residents recognized the threat immediately. While rent-controlled leases protected them from eviction, the constant pressure from management made life increasingly uncomfortable. New owners often sought voluntary departures through inconvenience, a tactic as old as hotel real estate itself. The residents fought back. Legal battles erupted almost immediately. Tenants filed complaints about maintenance deficiencies, meticulously documented code violations, and challenged proposed changes through every available channel. Trump's representatives pushed back aggressively. The condominium conversions proceeded regardless. Construction crews reconfigured units, opened sales offices, and marketed high-priced apartments to buyers eager for a Plaza address. Some units sold for over $10 million, easing the burden of crushing debt, yet each sale reduced the number of rooms generating ongoing income. Ivana Trump ran day-to-day operations with aggressive efficiency. Staff later described an atmosphere of constant pressure. Nothing was ever sufficient. Costs had to fall further. Service standards became impossible to maintain. The gap between ownership demands and operational reality widened relentlessly. Compounding the challenges, a public rivalry with Leona Helmsley added chaos. Helmsley owned the Park Lane Hotel across the street. Their personal animosity made headlines, spilling into legal filings and tabloids. The spectacle distracted from the Plaza's fundamental issues. When Helmsley was convicted of tax evasion in 1989, her infamous remark, "Only the little people pay taxes," dominated national news. One rival was gone, but the Plaza's problems remained. By 1990, the hotel owed approximately $250 million to bondholders. Interest payments exceeded what operations could generate. The heavy debt, born of a leveraged purchase using high-interest junk bonds, had become a chokehold. No amount of cost-cutting could bridge the gap between revenue and obligations. Meanwhile, the junk bond market itself was crumbling. The leveraged buyout era that had enabled Trump's purchase was ending catastrophically. Companies that borrowed heavily to acquire properties defaulted. Banks underwriting the risky deals faced massive losses. The Plaza, once a symbol of permanence and social prestige, teetered on the brink of financial collapse.
For all its marble floors, stained glass ceilings, and legendary chandeliered ballrooms, the Plaza had become a cautionary tale that even the most iconic institutions could be destabilized by debt, ambition, and the unrelenting calculus of profit. The very elements that made the Plaza invaluable, its culture, its staff, its community, were invisible on a balance sheet. And when owners saw only numbers, legends could die. By the early 1990s, the financial architecture that had enabled Trump's Plaza purchase no longer existed.
His empire, built on borrowed money and leveraged deals, was unraveling across multiple fronts. Casinos in Atlantic City bled cash. A private airline sputtered in the red. Yachts and mansions demanded costly upkeep while generating no revenue. The plaza, once a symbol of enduring prestige, became another casualty in a sprawling empire stretched too thin. Employees watched with quiet dread. They understood the calculus of disaster before the press did. They saw deferred maintenance accumulate, ceilings leaking in hidden corridors, marble floors dulled by neglect, plumbing that groaned under strain. They noticed corners cut, budgets trimmed, and schedules pushed beyond reason. For staff who had spent decades within the hotel's walls, the situation was personal. Many had no other place to go. The plaza was their life. Permanent residents felt the decay daily. Requests for repairs went unanswered. Minor issues became major delays, and the staff who remained appeared exhausted, demoralized, and overextended. The intangible qualities that had made plaza living extraordinary, the community, the continuity, the quiet rituals of service, were vanishing. Residents began contemplating alternatives, some leaving the neighborhood entirely, others clinging to rent-controlled protections while enduring growing discomfort. Preservationists sounded alarms. Landmark laws protected physical structures, yet they offered no defense against neglect. Water intrusion, corroding fixtures, deferred maintenance, these threats could irreparably harm elements deemed protected. Legal enforcement existed in theory, but claiming hardship, owners could defer repairs indefinitely. Meanwhile, Trump continued a public performance, declaring the plaza vibrant and profitable, announcing expansions while simultaneously cutting staff and touting personal wealth while the building and much of his empire teetered toward bankruptcy.
Former employees later described the management atmosphere as chaotic, even hostile. Decisions arrived from the top, unilateral and unconsulted. Expertise, years in the making, was ignored. Long-term planning was impossible. Daily survival consumed every ounce of attention. In 8 decades, the plaza had developed an institutional culture, a rhythm of operation that harmonized service, residents, and guests. Under Trump, that culture was systematically dismantled. The contrast with previous owners was stark. Earlier corporate stewards had been impersonal but cautious. They introduced bureaucratic inefficiencies, yes, but they had never saddled the property with crushing debt. They had not engineered an environment where financial survival necessitated undermining the very qualities that made the hotel valuable. Trump's approach was emblematic of his broader business style. Acquire with leverage, extract maximum value quickly, let unsustainable debt destabilize the asset, then move on. Casinos, airlines, and hotels alike would repeat the pattern. The plaza became one of the most visible examples. By 1992, the situation was terminal. The plaza could not service its debt. Trump could not inject additional capital. Bondholders demanded repayment. Something had to give. And what gave revealed his priorities. The plaza's operational integrity would be sacrificed to preserve his personal stake and public image. In November 1992, Trump surrendered control of the plaza to his creditors. The restructuring told the story in precise, unforgiving numbers. Bondholders who had financed the purchase received 49% ownership. Trump retained 49% but lost management authority. Citibank and other lenders took the remaining equity. The plaza had survived, technically, but only in diminished form. Bondholders absorbed losses. Trump kept the name, the association, and the publicity. The building bore the cost. The consequences of 4 years under Trump's active management were tangible. Deferred maintenance had accumulated throughout the hotel. Systems once meticulously maintained now suffered neglect. Chandeliers dulled, fixtures aged prematurely. Long-serving staff dismissed in cost-cutting waves had taken years of skill and institutional memory with them. Remaining employees juggled responsibilities formerly distributed among multiple specialists, inevitably reducing service quality.
Permanent residents endured years of hostility and indifference. Complaints were met with bureaucratic obfuscation or legal threats. Services they had relied upon, prompt repairs, attentive housekeeping, discreet concierge assistance, declined sharply. Some residents surrendered and moved out. Others, protected by rent stabilization laws, remained but behind invisible barricades, guarding their rights while living in a building whose culture had evaporated. The condominium conversions irreversibly transformed the plaza's character. Hotel rooms that had welcomed travelers for 80 years were now private apartments, marketed to the global elite for prestige and tax advantages. The building's purpose inverted. A hotel became a condominium tower with a famous lobby. Harry Black's vision of a grand, functioning hotel had been supplanted. Trump extracted value, and the building adapted in ways that prioritized short-term profit over long-term legacy. Financial analysts assessed the damage bluntly. The plaza's competitive position had declined sharply. Modern luxury hotels offered conveniences and technologies the aging building could no longer match. Business travelers, increasingly indifferent to history, chose efficiency over prestige. Yet the plaza's fame endured, even as operational excellence faltered. Preservationists documented losses and what remained: the landmarked spaces, the palm court's stained glass ceiling, the oak room's dark oak paneling, the grand ballroom's ornate plasterwork had survived, but only physically. The law could protect the bones of the building, but it could not protect what made the plaza legendary: the community, the culture, the invisible infrastructure of service built over generations. These intangible qualities, the essence of what made the plaza unique, had been deliberately undermined. What remained was a hotel that looked magnificent, but whose soul had been fractured by financial ambition, debt, and managerial expedience. In the end, the story of Trump's Plaza is not one of walls and ceilings, marble and chandeliers. It is a story of what happens when human vision and history collide with the relentless calculus of debt and ego. The building survived, yes, but the world inside it, the rhythms and rituals that had defined American luxury for decades, would never be the same. The service culture painstakingly built across generations, the intimate knowledge, the relationships that made permanent residents feel at home, the accumulated expertise that distinguished the plaza from any other hotel had been profoundly damaged, perhaps destroyed under the weight of financial ambition. What remained of the staff struggled heroically to maintain standards with inadequate resources, but no training program could replicate decades of institutional wisdom. Procedures could be taught, manuals could be written, but the intuitive understanding that came from decades of working in a single extraordinary hotel could not. The plaza functioned as a hotel, yes, but it no longer functioned as the plaza had. Former employees described the Trump years to journalists as a period of fear, confusion, and chaos. Colleagues disappeared overnight, long-standing routines vanished, and institutional knowledge walked out the door with the departing staff. Watching the hotel deteriorate while ownership proclaimed success was a source of deep frustration and helplessness. Permanent residents shared similar recollections. Years of legal battles over basic services, threatening letters, and management harassment left them exhausted. Some gave up and moved on, while others remained, guarded by rent stabilization protections, feeling like survivors of a long siege.
The community they had defended for decades had been irreparably altered.
Viewed in the broader context of late 1980s America, the Plaza's struggles were almost inevitable. The real estate bubble encouraged reckless speculation. Easy credit enabled leveraged acquisitions that made little economic sense. Hotels, office buildings, and shopping centers nationwide suffered similar fates. But the Plaza's fame magnified its decline, making every misstep public. Trump emerged from bankruptcy with his reputation curiously intact. He had failed spectacularly, cost creditors hundreds of millions, and damaged an American landmark. Yet he retained celebrity status and a minority ownership stake, a testament to his ability to fail upward, a trait that would define his business career. Entering 1993, the Plaza faced a new era under restructured ownership, but the challenges were immense. Debt had been refinanced, but deferred maintenance remained. Staff morale was fragile, and permanent residents carried years of trauma. The hotel's operational reputation had suffered lasting damage. Recovery would demand resources, commitment, and an appreciation for the building's unique culture, qualities not easily aligned in an ownership consortium. Observers noted the patterns likely to repeat: highly leveraged acquisitions of trophy properties, operational strategies focused on short-term cash extraction, staff reductions that obliterated institutional knowledge, and a veneer of glamour masking slow decay. The Plaza had demonstrated the danger clearly, yet future buyers often ignored the lessons. Could a great hotel rebuild its culture after systematic destruction? Could decades of lost staff expertise be reconstructed? Could permanent residents ever trust new ownership after years of hostility? Could the Plaza become the institution it had been before 1988? The building itself remained magnificent. From Fifth Avenue, the Plaza sparkled. Chandeliers still caught sunlight, tourists still posed for photographs, the address still commanded premium attention. But the essence had been extracted. A fragile skeleton of the hotel's former greatness remained. The spirit that had made it legendary had been eroded. The carousel of ownership, however, would not stop.
In 1995, CDL Hotels of Singapore acquired controlling interest in the Plaza for approximately $325 million. A subsidiary of Hong Leong Holdings, one of Singapore's largest property developers, CDL brought deep pockets and professional hotel management. Their acquisitions signaled the Plaza's transformation into a global trophy property. International capital poured in, deferred maintenance from the Trump years was addressed, and infrastructure upgrades restored some operational professionalism. Staff morale improved marginally, but the structural and cultural scars remained. Condominium conversions had permanently altered the building's character. The Plaza could never fully reclaim its pre-1988 identity. Complicated ownership arrangements further limited decisive action. Trump still held a minority stake, requiring consensus on major investments. Restoration required negotiation, slowing progress. In 1999, Fairmont Hotels assumed management. The Canadian chain, experienced in running prestigious historic properties like the Waldorf Astoria and London's Savoy, brought operational expertise and a respect for architectural heritage. Under Fairmont, the Plaza achieved a delicate balance: historic preservation coupled with modern luxury expectations. Renovations and service improvements were implemented carefully, and the hotel functioned more smoothly. Yet the condominium conversions, the structural shifts, and the fragmented ownership prevented a full restoration of the institution's former communal life. The 2004 sale further reshaped the property. Lard Properties, an Israeli development firm, purchased the Plaza for $675 million. Plans for additional condominium conversions were announced immediately.
Guest room inventory would shrink further, a continuation of the trend that began under Trump. Preservationists fought the proposals, emphasizing that reducing hotel space would fundamentally alter the plaza's character. Landmark protections safeguarded architectural elements, but they could not prevent conversion of guest rooms into private apartments.
Conversions proceeded. Floors were converted into multi-million-dollar condos. Wealthy buyers paid extraordinary sums for plaza addresses. Individual units sold for $30 million or more, and a triplex penthouse eventually commanded over $50 million. The prestige of the plaza name remained undiminished, yet the operational heart of the hotel continued to shrink. Remaining hotel rooms were upgraded and enlarged to ultra-luxury standards. Nightly rates soared, positioning the plaza as an exclusive destination for a global elite. Yet the building now functions simultaneously as a hotel, a private residential tower, and a status symbol, a complex and fractured identity. Permanent residents continued their decades-long struggle. Some, protected by rent stabilization laws, remained in apartments surrounded by units worth tens of millions, a surreal juxtaposition of economic realities. Legal battles over tenant rights continued for years. Departures of residents weakened the communal structure, eroding the social ecosystem that had distinguished plaza residential life for generations. The hotel effectively waged a slow attrition campaign against its longest-term inhabitants. Staff patterns mirrored these transformations. Union representation persisted, but working conditions and expectations had shifted dramatically. Ultra-luxury service combined with cost pressures created constant tension. Turnover increased, and the multi-generational employment model that had defined the plaza for decades vanished entirely. Institutional knowledge, painstakingly accumulated over a century, was irretrievably lost. In 2012, the ownership structure shifted again. Sahara India Pariwar, an Indian conglomerate, acquired a controlling stake for approximately $570 million. The purchase drew scrutiny because Sahara's chairman faced legal challenges in India. Regulatory questions cast a shadow over the plaza's management, demonstrating how far the landmark had traveled from its original American stewardship. An iconic New York institution, once the crown jewel of Fifth Avenue, now operated under the control of a foreign conglomerate and tangled in international legal controversy. Throughout these decades, the plaza remained physically magnificent. Its chandeliers glittered, facades impressed, and tourists flocked. But the intangible essence, staff expertise, resident community, social rituals, and operational culture had been systematically eroded over decades of leveraged acquisitions, condominium conversions, and financial prioritization over stewardship. The building survived, its architecture protected, yet the soul that had made it legendary remained deeply scarred. The story of the plaza after 1988 is a study in contrasts. Glittering facades masking internal decay, historic splendor shadowed by fractured culture, global prestige coupled with operational compromise. Survival had been achieved, but flourishing was another matter entirely. The carousel of ownership would continue, each new buyer promising preservation, each ultimately extracting value. The plaza remained an American landmark, yet its humanity, the culture that had made staying there mean more than comfort or convenience, remained precarious, a fragile legacy continually tested by ambition, debt, and global capital. By the late 2010s, the fate of the Plaza Hotel no longer rested solely in Manhattan. Its future was entangled with courts, financiers, and regulators thousands of miles away. National heritage had become a global commodity, traded and leveraged across continents. Sahara India Pariwar's legal and financial troubles in India rendered the plaza an asset to be liquidated rather than an institution to be nurtured. The hotel's operations reflected this instability. Guests might not have seen the ripple effects of distant lawsuits, but staff felt them acutely.
delays in maintenance, tightened budgets, and the subtle erosion of institutional culture. In 2018, Qatari sovereign wealth entered the story. Qatara Hospitality, the investment arm of Qatar's $600 billion fund, acquired the plaza for a reported $600 million. America's most famous hotel now belonged to a Middle Eastern government, completing its transformation into a global investment vehicle. Qatara had resources that dwarfed any previous owner. Money was no obstacle. The question, however, was philosophical as well as financial. Would a sovereign fund prioritize preservation or returns? In every prior era, promises of restoration had come with caveats, and the pattern was unmistakable. Each transition had delivered partial improvements while continuing commodification. The plaza survived, but with each new steward, its original spirit diminished.
Some victories were undeniable. Landmark protections ensured the survival of the Palm Court, where afternoon tea still passed under its famed stained glass ceiling. The Oak Room retained its dark paneling despite multiple operators. The Grand Ballroom continued hosting elegant events, its chandeliers glittering as they had for over a century. The architectural heritage endured. Yet other losses proved permanent. The hotel's room count had shrunk dramatically, from 800 in its golden years to roughly 280. The permanent residential community, the heartbeat of plaza life, had essentially vanished. The multi-generational staff culture, once a defining feature, had been scattered by decades of turnover and corporate restructuring. Expertise built over a century no longer existed. Landmark laws, for all their symbolic weight, had limits. They could preserve physical features, regulate zoning, and protect tenants, but they could not safeguard culture, knowledge, or community. These intangible qualities depended on consistent, committed stewardship. For decades, the plaza had lacked such ownership. The cumulative effect was clear. The hotel functioned, but it no longer thrived as it once had. Today, the plaza operates as an ultra-luxury property. Premium rates, meticulously maintained public spaces, and professional service create an experience that meets contemporary expectations. Guests who have never known the pre-1988 plaza leave satisfied. Those with memory of the hotel's earlier incarnation recognize the losses: the vanished residential community, the eroded service culture, and the sense of belonging that once distinguished staying at the plaza. Corporate management systems have replaced informal, familial practices. Training programs standardize service rather than fostering distinctive institutional wisdom. The workforce is professional, competent, and disciplined, but it no longer carries the generational knowledge that made the plaza unique. Labor disputes over wages and conditions reflect the broader tensions of the hospitality industry, but they also mark the transformation of a once family-like institution into a corporate workplace.
Walk into the plaza today, and the building itself still commands awe. The lobby retains its monumental scale. Marble columns soar toward ornate ceilings. Crystal chandeliers scatter refracted light across polished floors. For first-time visitors, the space fulfills Harry Black's original vision: grandeur, elegance, and the unmistakable presence of importance. The Palm Court continues to host afternoon tea beneath its historic ceiling. Guests dress for the occasion, pose for photographs, and experience the ritual in a recognizable form. The Oak Room has shifted purpose. Its dark wood and murals survive, but it no longer serves as a male sanctuary where business deals unfolded over decades. Continuity is now physical rather than cultural. The reduced room count has allowed for larger, more luxurious accommodations. Modern amenities have been installed throughout. Service is professional. From a contemporary hospitality perspective, the plaza delivers. Yet history and memory complicate the narrative. The permanent residential community, once a living, breathing part of the hotel, has almost entirely disappeared. A handful of rent-stabilized tenants remain amid multi-million-dollar condominiums. Longtime neighbors are gone, staff familiar with them replaced repeatedly. The building contains homes, but no longer a community.
The upper floors now house global billionaires whose units may sit empty for most of the year. They own addresses, not legacies. Harry Black would recognize the facade, the green copper roof, the limestone exterior, the corner of Fifth Avenue and Central Park South. But the building's soul has changed. He built a great hotel. Today, it functions as a global asset with historic trimmings. The plaza stands as a monument to both preservation and transformation. Its public spaces retain beauty and purpose, reflecting careful architectural stewardship. Its private spaces have been reshaped by market imperatives, reducing both hotel capacity and communal life. Guests experience luxury, but they experience it differently than the generations who inhabited the plaza as a home or a social nexus. The service culture, institutional memory, and resident community that once defined the hotel have been replaced by a professionalized corporate system.
The plaza's story is a study of contrasts. The glimmering chandeliers and palm court rituals remind visitors of its enduring elegance. The absence of residential life and the conversion of rooms to high-priced condos testify to its commodification. Preservation laws have protected the bones, but the heart of the institution has been fractured repeatedly by debt, leveraged buyouts, and global finance. Survival is assured. Flourishing is another matter entirely. The plaza today is a hotel of exceptional standards, yet the intangible essence, the warmth, history, and generational expertise remains a ghost in the halls. Black would walk through the lobby and recognize its physical form, but he would not find the life that once animated it. The plaza endures as a landmark, a symbol, a global icon, but the hotel Harry Black envisioned, a place where community, service, and prestige intertwined seamlessly, exists now primarily in memory. Its fate reflects the challenges of preserving not only architecture, but culture in a world where finance and global ownership increasingly dictate the destiny of even the most cherished institutions. Harry Black imagined more than a building. He created a destination, a stage where American society gathered, performed, and witnessed itself. The plaza he envisioned thrummed with life. Guests mingled, residents established rhythms of daily existence, and staff maintained a delicate choreography of service and discretion. Communities emerged within its walls, spanning generations. Black's hotel was a living institution, a carefully calibrated ecosystem of luxury, social prestige, and human connection. That institution, however, has been hollowed out. The walls remain, the chandeliers continue to sparkle, but the life inside has fundamentally changed.
Black's personal fate adds a haunting irony. He built monuments across the country, skyscrapers that redefined city skylines, real estate holdings that stretched like invisible networks across the nation. Yet the crash of 1929 destroyed him. On July 19, 1930, Harry Black took his own life at the age of 67. The man who commissioned the plaza to embody grandeur and permanence died broken and bankrupt. The pattern repeats throughout the story of American monuments. Builders create, inheritors consume, and the structures endure long after human ambition falters. Chester Congdon built Glen Sheen to preserve his family legacy. Descendants destroyed each other over inheritance. Harry Black built the plaza as a monument to hospitality. Subsequent owners extracted wealth until the institution was gutted. The buildings outlast everyone. The plaza illuminates profound questions about heritage and stewardship. Who owns a landmark? What obligations come with possession? Can private property serve public purposes? Legal frameworks offer partial answers. Landmark designation protects physical features. Zoning regulates certain uses. Tenant protections shield residents. Yet the law cannot mandate care, cannot instill love for a building, cannot compel an owner to cultivate culture or community. Preservation successes, the palm court ceiling, the oak room paneling, the grand ballroom's enduring elegance, deserve recognition. They are the tangible victories of decades of advocacy. But these triumphs cannot alone sustain a living institution. Physical preservation without cultural preservation produces a museum, not a home, not a society, not a hotel alive with human rhythm. Tourists photograph the Palm Court without knowing the social rituals that once defined it. They admire the Oak Room without understanding the whispered negotiations and deals that shaped its history. The spaces survive as aesthetic experiences rather than social ones. The plaza competes today with newer luxury hotels, properties designed for modern expectations. Guests want Wi-Fi, climate control, gyms, conference facilities.
The plaza provides these imperfectly. Its age is both a charm and a limitation. The hotel is familiar in film and television, appearing in romantic comedies and prestige dramas. The image has outlasted the institution. Its brand has become more durable than the reality it once embodied. Ownership continues to evolve. Every transaction brings promises of restoration. Some owners invest, others extract value. CDL Hotels, Fairmont, Ladd Properties, Sahara, and finally Katara Hospitality each assumed control with varying degrees of commitment. The building endures, the carousel spins. Physical grandeur survives, the chandeliers continue to cast light, the marble remains polished, but the intangible essence, the living institution, is gone. Permanent residents, once the heartbeat of plaza life, have vanished. Multi-generational staff culture has been replaced by professionalized hospitality systems. The Palm Court continues to serve afternoon tea, the Oak Room remains paneled, the Grand Ballroom hosts events, but the spirit that animated these spaces for decades is no longer present. Walk into the plaza today and its scale, elegance, and beauty remain undeniable. First-time visitors experience what Black intended: majesty, ceremony, and a sense that this corner of Manhattan matters. Yet, for those who remember the plaza as it once was, there is absence. The ritual persists, but community, continuity, and cultural depth do not. The reduced room count, the conversion to condominiums, the displacement of residents, and repeated management upheavals have extracted the life from the building. The plaza functions, but it no longer flourishes as it did. Harry Black would recognize the facade, the green copper roof, the limestone exterior. But the soul of the institution he built, the interwoven culture, traditions, and relationships, has been dissipated. The plaza now exists as a monument without its human pulse. Its legacy is paradoxical, both triumphant and tragic. The architectural achievement endures, the institution does not. The chandeliers keep burning. The marble continues to gleam. The building survives, indifferent to the fortunes won or lost within its walls. Ownership changes hands, lives pass through its rooms, empires rise and fall. The plaza remains, more enduring than the people who fight over it, more permanent than the wealth and ambition that animate it, a testament to dreams that outlast the dreamers. The plaza's story is a cautionary tale and a celebration. Preservation law, financial investment, and celebrity attention cannot fully protect living institutions. Human culture, expertise, and community require continuity, stewardship, and devotion. In their absence, monuments remain, beautiful but hollow. The plaza endures in this tension, a shining jewel of architectural mastery, a stage for social spectacle, and simultaneously a hollowed monument to a bygone era of hospitality, elegance, and human connection. Its legacy is complex, cinematic, and eternal. The projection screen glows in a darkened classroom at the University of Michigan, Dearborn. Graduate student David clicks through slides he has assembled over more than 3 years. Maps overlay maps, timelines intersect. Photographs from different decades sit side by side, compressing generations into a single frame. He dares his audience to trace the connections, to follow the invisible threads of influence. His dissertation asserts what would have once seemed impossible. The Ford Mansion empire was not an anomaly, it was a template. The techniques Ford helped normalize, company-tied housing, domestic surveillance masquerading as welfare architecture, spaces designed to shape private behavior, did not vanish when his experiments ended. They evolved. They spread into corporate campuses, planned communities, and homeowner associations that regulate everything from mailbox heights to holiday decorations. David traces these lineages with precision. Home inspection protocols echo in modern employment background checks, where social media histories and personal networks are scrutinized. Conditional housing reappears in corporate relocation packages that offer subsidized homes and schools while deepening dependence. Standardized workers' streets foreshadow the uniformity of suburban subdivisions where variation is prohibited by covenant and color charts. He is careful to note the limits of the analogy. Modern employers rarely send inspectors into kitchens. Contemporary planned communities seldom tie residents to a single factory job. The tools have changed. The control is softer, distributed, less visible, but not necessarily weaker. What David's research uncovers is a persistent impulse, the recurring desire of organizations to extend influence beyond the workplace, to shape how people work, eat, sleep, spend time, and even raise children. Ford expressed this desire bluntly. His successors code it in subtler language. The slides advance. Fairlane appears alongside corporate headquarters equipped with apartments, gyms, cafeterias, and wellness spaces, designed to keep employees on site as many hours as possible. The lines connecting Detroit, Dearborn, Lake St. Clair, and the Amazon stretch across continents, across decades, across social hierarchies. David's maps reveal patterns, rhythms, and echoes of power that ripple through time, linking estates, company towns, and modern corporate infrastructure in ways rarely recognized.
Each frame carries its own story. Workers' streets where children now play freely, the once rigid lines softened by domestic gardens, basketball hoops, and flowering hedges. Interiors of mansions once closed to all but the selected few now host tours, classrooms, and community events. Plantations in Fordlandia, once silent under strict oversight, glow with the scattered lights of homes alive with families, small businesses, schools, and music spilling into the night. The empire endures, but in forms no one could have predicted. David pauses. A photograph of a rusted water tower in Fordlandia hangs on the screen. Below it, homes cluster like stars, lights flickering through windows. The narrative is neither simple nor neat. Control, Ford's original goal, did not disappear. It transformed, bent, and sometimes broke under the persistence of human life. What survives is a hybrid, the vision of one man, filtered through generations of lived experience, adaptation, resistance, and reinterpretation. In that darkened classroom, students lean forward. They are drawn not to admire, but to interrogate. The maps are invitations to see the empire, trace its lineage, and ask hard questions about power, architecture, labor, inheritance, and human agency. The Mansion Empire, once a physical manifestation of one man's vision, has become a living network of questions, decisions, and dialogues across generations, continents, and time itself. On the projection screen, the Fordlandia Hospital sits side by side with modern corporate wellness programs. Slides flicker, step counts, heart rates, sleep patterns, all tracked, all linked to insurance premiums that rise or fall depending on compliance.
Across campus, images of workers' houses contrast with contemporary employer-subsidized units for nurses, teachers, and warehouse staff. Rent and housing tied to employment. Lose the job, lose the roof. Across Dearborn, workers' streets ease into another ordinary day. Children wait for school buses, unaware that their great-great-grandparents once walked under watchful eyes, anxious about inspections. Houses along these blocks bloom in colors the sociological department would have prohibited. Bright doors, mismatched shutters, gardens following personal taste rather than printed diagrams. Tomatoes grow beside roses. Basketball courts replace manicured lawns. The neighborhood breathes independently. At Gawkler Point, the lake catches the morning sun that once streamed through Eleanor Ford's windows. Staff unlock doors, switch on lights. Tours begin within the hour. Phones ring in the office. Grounds crews move through flower beds and borders that now belong to anyone who chooses to show up. In Fordlandia, under the rusted water tower with its fading Ford logo, another day begins in the Amazon heat. Families wake, prepare breakfast, walk to schools or workplaces once dominated by corporate directives. Buildings intended for company use now serve local needs. The residents are not living Henry Ford's design, they are living their own lives, shaped by local decisions, desires, and realities. The mansion empire has not vanished. Its stones remain. Its streets endure. Water towers rise above rooftops, but the meanings of these structures have shifted. Walls hold new stories. Spaces serve new actors. The visitor at Fair Lane lingers in the great hall before following a docent into the next room. Behind her, the brass knob rests, gleaming, ready for the next hand, the next arrival. The door that once excluded most people now waits open for anyone who comes.